in Australia, and welcome to my weekly online class to go for this week. So this week the featured bundle is the Branching Out bundle, and I will just switch down to the desk. So these are the cards for this week's class, and this is the stamp set from the featured bundle. So you've got images, you've got a range of sentiments for all different occasions, and then the dies you've got some of the so the image elements from the stamp set, but then you've also got all of these stitched label dies, which are fantastic. I've used them on a lot of different cards. So for those who aren't familiar with the weekly online class to go, so as I said, it's my weekly class. If you place an order of $75 or more in my online store before the end of this Saturday each week, so you've got until the midnight Australian Eastern Daylight Time on the Saturday night to get your order in. So $75 before shipping and after any Stampin' Rewards redemption. Then I will send you the kits to make 2 each of the 3 cards featured each week. So I will include all the cardstock and designer series paper that you'll need, any die cut elements that are not part of the featured bundle. So for example, in this card here, this label die, this is not part of the featured bundle. So both the main label and the one behind, I'll include those die cuts, but any die cuts from the featured bundle I don't send. I'll send you the cardstock so that you can cut them out and stamp if they need stamping, but not the actual die cuts themselves. If you don't have the featured bundle, you can use whatever you have in your stash. I've also used a couple of different stamp sets for some of the sentiments. So the Merry Christmas comes from this one. So this is just a single stamp set with the one sentiment. And then this one is part of the Traditional Labels bundle. So the dies are from the Traditional Label set, and then I've used the Seasons Greetings from this stamp set. But you can use whatever you have in your stash. All right, let's get started. I'll just pull out my kit. So we'll start with this one first. So for this one, I'm using Pretty Peacock as the base, and I've already die cut the images that I will need. So I've got some of the, these are from the bundle, as well as these 2, and then 2 of the label dies, some designer series paper from the Elegant Pine Snowflakes, and some basic white for the insert. Let's move that over to the side. Let's do the stamping first. So to start with, we want to stamp the sentiment. So I'm using, where is it? It's right down the bottom, my cherry cobbler. And I've got the big Merry Christmas. This is quite a big sentiment. So it's good when you've got large labels, and I'm just going to make sure I've got enough ink on my ink pad. I do need to re-ink some of them, but this one is looking good. So we're just going to go in the center, well, roughly in the center. So the Christmas is quite big, and excuse my head if it ends up in the camera. It's very difficult to do this when I can't. Oh, and I've messed that up. Well, it's a good thing I accidentally did it on the wrong side. Let's try that again. was a little too far over. So you do need to be careful with this one because the Christmas is so long, you want to make sure you are sort of around that part, so you've got the widest part, and you are probably going to have my head in the camera for a bit so I can hopefully line this up a bit better. That's a bit better. Still not quite as far across as I would like, but it's good enough. It's at least, it's a lot better than the previous attempt. But thankfully that was on the wrong side, so it's all good. All right, now we need to stamp up in this corner, so I'm going to flip it around just because it's a bit easier, and once I find that's the one I need, so I'm using the three little branches, the ones that are closest together. There is another one where they're a bit further apart, so I want the one where they're closer together, and I'm going with Old Olive for this one. This one needs a bit more. I do need to re-ink this one, haven't got to that yet. So this one, the top one, we want a little bit of space between the edge, because we want to put the little pine cone in. So that's about right, and then I will get my pecan pie and just one of the little pine cones, and I think I'll stamp off for this one, and then just in the middle there. All right, so that's it for the stamping. Now let's start putting this together. Hi Dimity, nice to see you. My comments are actually showing up where they're supposed to, which is a nice change. I can actually see them. All right, where's my green glue? So let's stick this one down. Okay, that's about right. Alrighty, now let's get, where's my card base gone? Here it is. Move that out of the way. I've got my green glue out, so let's just stick with that. Okay, and that's right, I've got I did quite a thin border with this one, so I'm glad I went with the green glue, because I'm going to need to adjust it slightly on this side. Just want to push it down a little. That will be fine now, and I have a feeling, yes, I meant to, good thing I've got a little bit of space. So I actually meant to stick some of these pieces behind before I stuck this down, but I forgot, but that's all right. I have enough time that I can carefully get some space behind this. So we can, and I can always trim down if I need to, but I think should be right. So we can put that one down there, and then this one is coming, this one comes a bit further across. Oh, I need to put that little piece out there. There we go. And then I think, yes, I did. I'll add a little bit of adhesive to these just because there's now not as much sort of behind because I've peeled it up, but that should be fine. Let's stick that one down there and add a little bit more to this one. And we'll press all that down now. That should be fine. Get all the insides of the die cuts out and just make sure that it's all going to fit on the card and not run over the just don't want it running over the score line, which it is ever so slightly. So now we can actually just put it further down. Let's just do that rather than destroying it in the process. Let's just modify. And I'll just add a little bit of adhesive on these ones just because there's not quite as much behind sort of where the ends of them are sitting, so I just want to make sure that they are going to stick down properly. So I will just make sure that they're going to not end up over the edge of the score line. So that looks fine. It's right on the edge. It will be fine. All right, let's add the insert. Alrighty, and flip this over. Then all that is left is to add some embellishments. And for this one, I'm going with the cherry cobbler and pearl adhesive backed berries. I'm going to add one of the 3 berries up in the corner here. Oops, if it wants to stick, there we go. And then just another couple down there. And let's move these out of the way. All right, that is card number 1 done. All right, let's move on to the second one, which is this one. So for this one, I am using a Secret Sea card base, and we have a little bit of ink blending for this one. Let me find the kit. So the kits for this one, there is an embossed piece of basic white, and you will get the embossed piece with the kit. Another one of the so you get the cardstock to die cut the label. Some more Designer Series paper. We're going with the other side, and then some cardstock to die cut the little acorns, and some basic white for the inside. Alright, so we've got a bit of stamping and ink blending to do for this one. So let's start with the first lot of ink blending. There are 2 lots of ink blending plus the stamping. And now just grab a scrap. So for the first part, we are just ink blending with some Old Olive. So where is my... Hi Renee, you made it. I know the time difference can make it a little tricky during daylight saving. Alright, so a little bit of Old Olive, and for this one it's nothing fancy. We just want to add a little bit of colour. I'm using one of the larger brushes for this just because it's quicker, and I don't need to worry too much about making sure that I've got ink in certain spots and not others. We just want to get some ink on pretty much all of it. So I'm going not just on the embossed part, I'm adding a little bit to all of it, but with a little bit more on some of the embossed surfaces. And it's up to you how much you add. You can add as much or as little as you like. Just remember, you can always add more, but you can't take it off. So don't be too heavy-handed. Start light, add more until you get the depth that you want. Alright, that will do for that one. Now, let's put that to the side, and I'll put that over there for now. I'll probably forget where I've put it. So let's come to the next piece. So we need to stamp and ink blend on this. So I think, I can't even remember which order I did, but I think it's a little bit easier to sort of see where you want the like, because we're starting darker at the edges and going lighter as you come in. It's a little bit easier when you've already stamped. It depends on what your images are and the colors as to whether you do one first or the other. For some things it doesn't matter. I would add the sentiment at the bottom, so I'm just going with the Thinking of You, and I'm using Pretty Peacock, which I definitely need to re-ink. I say that every time I use this one, and I keep forgetting to do it. Alright, so this is going fairly close to the bottom. And then I will keep the Pretty Peacock aside because that's what we're going to use for the ink blending. Now, I'm using the large branch, and I'm going to place it so not going to have, obviously I'm not going to be able to fit the whole thing on there, but I want to get sort of as much on as I can, but also make sure there's enough room to then stamp, add the other elements to it. So I think I went sort of somewhere about there when I did my samples. So I used Early Espresso for this, and it's hiding down the bottom, of course. Oh, clang. It's the one downside with the glass mat is it's quite loud when you drop acrylic blocks on it. Now I think I'm going to test this one out. I have just ordered actually a replacement ink pad for this one, even though I can obviously re-ink it, but because it's the old style, the old style container and the old style surface, so it's time to upgrade. This is one of the first ink pads I bought over 15 years ago, and actually speaking of 15 years ago, I actually received my 15-year pin in the mail today. So I got the email one back in September when I hit 15 years, and the actual physical pin arrived today, which was nice. So that ink pad is about 15 years old. It's doing well. It's doing very well, but I will still keep using it, but it is time to get a newer version as well. All right, so I think about there. I'm going to press down fairly hard with this one just to make sure that I actually get even coverage. That's looking pretty good. All right, and then I need, I was using Old Olive before, so it's definitely here. It is probably staring me in the face. Down the bottom. Ended up down the bottom. Now, for this one, I'm trying to remember which, I think I used, that's right, I used the three that are more spread out, and then also the single element as well. So let's just check that's just make sure that's got enough ink, and I'm just going to try and line it up as best I can. I'm not too fussed as long as it looks like it is attached to something, and I'm trying to avoid getting my head in the camera as I go, and also trying to remember how I did the other ones, but I can always add extra elements from the other single one to cover up any gaps. So that is fine. If there's a gap, we will cover it. And then I used it again on this bottom one here. and it's going to go off the edge, which is absolutely fine. And I think that one there's going to be a little bit of a gap, but that's actually fine because we are going to cover part of that anyway. And then I'm just going to come in with the single and add some extras. There is that. I'm going to add, I did add some extras for this one. But again, not worried about that because that is going to be covered. Now we need to come in with the Pretty Peacock. And I'm going to use a smaller brush for this one. And just particularly if you are stamping first and then ink blending, just be careful. The ink dries pretty quickly, but you may want to give a little bit of time to make sure it's got plenty of time to dry and doesn't smudge. It should be fine, but just give it a couple of seconds at least. The early espresso should be fine because it's been given a bit of time because we obviously stamped the old olive afterwards, so that's had time to dry. So we want to go darker at the outside edge and lighter as we go towards the center. And if you're using different colors, just be mindful of the combination that you're using and whether, depending on what you're using, you may want to do your ink blending first and then stamp over the top. I just found it a bit easier to do it this way so I can see where the final image is when I'm ink blending, so I know how much I want in the different spots. But that's just me. Some people are really good at eyeballing this sort of stuff and do not need to do that. So go with what works for you. Now I'm just going to add a little more down here, and then I'm going to come back and we'll add more at the top because I want this top corner to be quite a bit darker than it is. Getting there. Nearly there. Now, while I'm doing this, just a reminder, the starter kit offer ends in just a few days, so 31st of October is the last day to get the awesome starter kit offer that is currently available. So you've got two options. You can either get $235 worth of product for just $60, or if you want the larger kit, you can get $344 worth of product for just $169. So either option, and if you are concerned because you want the kit for this week's class, but you want the starter kit as well, and you're not sure what to do, please reach out, send me an email or message on Facebook, or text me if you have my number, and I can go through it all with you. Don't let that sort of put you off. If you sort of aren't sure what to do, just let me know, because it is a fantastic offer. It's definitely one of the best Stampin' Up! Have ever had, and it's well worth taking up. All right, I think that will do. Now let's move those out of the way, and we can move that out of the way. Otherwise I'll end up with ink all over everything. Let's bring all our pieces in. Oh, there's my little die cuts. Don't want to lose those. Get my card the right way around. Alrighty, so the Designer Series paper, now I might stick that down first, I think, just because it is full length, so there's no border. So I just like to make sure, one, that it is, I've cut my cardstock to the right size, but just make sure I haven't got any overhang or gap on either end. So this is just my personal preference. I like to, anything that's sort of full length or width, I like to stick down before I put it on the card front whenever possible. Oops. And this is definitely one of the benefits of using the green glue for this sort of thing, is you do have a little bit of time to adjust and make sure that everything is as you want it. You've got things straight, you've got them lined up properly. That looks pretty good, I think. Let's check how it's going to look. I reckon that looks pretty good. And also, because it's embossed, I like to use the green glue as well for embossed cardstock, just because it's easy for the glue to get into all the little crevices, and I find things tend to adhere better when you've got the green glue for that sort of stuff. All right, let's adjust. That's gone too far down, and now that's gone too far the other way. Let's bring that back, and now I've got glue all over my hands. It's all right, we can deal with that. All right. That looks better. Okay, and then I'm going to pop this one down. Now you could pop this up on dimensionals if you wanted to. I'm just going to stick it down with the green glue. Make sure I've got it the right way around. And centered, there we go. And then we just want to add these little guys. So I'm going to just going to decide where I want them to sit. I had 2 of them over here on my sample card, so that works well there, and then that hides that gap. And just make sure I stick these down on the right way. So let's go over here. Let's put that one there, and then the last one. So these little guys are perfect for hiding up any little mistakes or any gaps, and no one will ever know. All right, all that is left is to add the insert and then some embellishments. So let's flip, if I can get it up. Flip that over. And let's bring this back. So for this one, I am using the neutral map dots, and I'm just using a few of these small pecan pie ones. You could use whichever ones you like, or any other embellishments. Of course, you don't have to use these ones. And where am I going to go? Down here. Oops. And one more. Still there. Alrighty, that is the second card done. Okay, now the final one, which is this one. Oh, actually, there is one thing I forgot to do with this one. And you probably can't see it particularly well on mine because and I have a new one coming, and I don't have the stamp out for it, but I did add just a little bit of this image using the craft white. Now on mine, I'm not even going to show it, bring it up to the camera, just because you won't be able to see it. It is my my craft white ink pad is very old and needs replacing, and I do have a new one on the way. It hasn't arrived yet. I'm still going to do it, and it's not ideal to be doing it after I've stuck it all together, but thankfully it doesn't, you can see it, it does still give the effect that I wanted. You'll be able to see it better when I actually stamp it before it dries. So this, as you can see, this is the really old case. So this is, again, this one is probably at least, yeah, over 15 years old. And it definitely needs to be replaced, not just re-inked. This one does need to be replaced. But just to show you what I did, so yeah, all I did is and I might grab, I just want to grab a scrap piece of, just want a small scrap piece, this will do, just because I'm going, it's going to go over the edge, even though you probably won't see it, but I'm just going to add a little bit around the edges, and you're really not going to see much, particularly once it dries on this one, because it's so, yeah, you probably can't see much here, but it does, particularly if you've got a newer, well, it doesn't even have to be new, just not quite as old as mine, a newer ink pad, you will actually be able to see the effect, and it does look really nice. You probably can't see that particularly well, but, and once it dries, it's sort of a bit paler, but mine sort of almost disappears to nothing, but that is part of that card. My new one will probably arrive tomorrow, because that's the way it goes. Let's just clean that off, and just remember with the Craft White ink pads, you do need to give them extra time to dry. They do take, the ink does take quite a bit of time to dry, so just be mindful of that when putting your card together, that you do need to give it a little bit of time. And come back. My computer has decided to disappear. Oh, no, it's being difficult. There we go. It's back. All right. So, final card. So for this one, I have gone back to another Pretty Peacock card base, and for this one I'm using a combination of Season of Elegance Designer Series papers. So I've got some of the Basic Beige and the Pretty Peacock papers, and then Basic Beige cardstock, and this one you have a Basic Beige insert to go with the rest of the card, because putting a basic white insert looks a bit stark compared to when you've got Basic Beige for everything else and no basic white on there. All right, so let's do the stamping first. Just move some of this out of the way. So stamping for this one is similar to the previous one. I'll just, actually no, I don't need to clean that one, but I will clean these ones because I'm using a different color, but all good for everything else. All right. So early espresso for the branch, and I'm just trying to remember what went where. I think I went about, probably roughly about there. It went off the side, so that's probably somewhere about there. Let's go with that and get my early espresso back in. Make sure that's all inked up nicely. sticking to my paper. So now where did I decide? I think it was a bit lower actually. I don't think it was super high, but let's go with there. Too bad if that wasn't where I wanted it. It's where it's going. And just press down over all of it to make sure you've got even coverage. And then I used Pretty Peacock for this one. Now I have a feeling I just went with the single one for this and just did individual ones exactly where I wanted them, rather than trying to make the triple work. But of course you can use whatever you like, whatever you find easiest. There's no rules. It's up to you. And I'm going to go a bit lower down with this one so it's covered. That looks good for that. And then we will come in. I'm going with the early espresso for this one. I'm just going to check that it and another one over here. Yep. And I had another one up the top. I'm going to move this one just because. There. Now, I did similar sort of thing with this one. Basically what I did with the basic white, but this one I used basic beige, and I kind of went pretty much all over. Now the basic beige is, it's quite pale, so it works quite well for this, and you can stamp off. And I went pretty much everywhere on this one. And you don't have to be too exact with this one, just, wherever you feel like. And I think it did a bit in the middle there. And the good thing with this one is you can, because it is quite pale, it's kind of easy to, it's forgiving, put it that way. So you can get away with, it not being quite perfect. And you can just on the very end, you can get the little end one. If you've got little spots that you want to fill in, just ink up that end piece and fill in wherever you need to. And I'll just add a few more. That'll do. That's plenty. and once it dries, like after a while, the basic base in particular, it will look a little paler than that. So if you're sort of worried it's a bit too dark, it should be a little paler by the time it's dried. So let's do the sentiment, and just want to make sure that need to make sure I've got the dye the right way around, because there is a right way and a wrong way with this one, particularly with this if you're using the stamp. So always pays to check, just hover your stamp if you're worried about, you know, that you've got any ink left on it, just hover it over to make sure that it matches, because if we come this way, it doesn't quite. So let me just make sure I have got, maybe I had it, no. So actually, don't know how well you can see, but if we line that up, you can see it doesn't quite match with that one. So if we come right up, you've got a bit of a gap there, and there's a gap in there, and then at the bottom, if you line up at that corner, it doesn't quite match. So there is a right and wrong way in terms of matching the stamps. So it pays to double check before you stamp. And we'll ink this one up, make sure I've got, probably getting ink all over my fingers at the moment because I'm pressing that in far too hard. All right, that's all right, that should be fine. And we just want it, you know, roughly centered and aligning properly. There we go. All right, so let's, seeing as we've got this here, for this one, I've just cut the sentiment label in half so that we can get the border. So, and you may need to just trim slightly, but we'll get to that in a sec if we need to. So just cut in half. I can't remember if this was the one I needed to just trim to make sure there was nothing sticking out, and I think that is actually the bottom. Yes. So when you're sticking this together, just line up. If you line up those edges, then you should be good. All right, let's add some green glue. Oh yes, didn't even see that. I did put a note, I don't know if you can see that, but I actually wrote in pencil on the back which was the top and which was the bottom of the label, which I completely forgot about until I flipped it over. All right, let's get this one. Down. Oops. Let's flip this over so we can actually see it and make sure we've got enough border. Come on, a little bit more. There we go. Oops. Oh dear. Do need to be careful with this one because it is, yeah, you do have that cut in the middle. So you don't want to do what I just did. Let's add, but once it's stuck down, it should all be fine. What am I doing? I'm going the wrong way, aren't I? Yes, I am. And I'll fix up that adhesive issue in just a sec. I'll get this in place first. So that's better. That one's, top one's got a bit more of a border than the bottom one. So let's see if we can get that down a bit, but not that far. Back you come. That's a bit better. Now, a bit more border than the bottom, but that's all good. However, oh no, it's fine. Couldn't remember if I had trimmed that particular one or not. I didn't. Now, because I've got a little bit of extra adhesive around the edges, what you can do, and I think I may have showed you this tip a number of weeks back, but if you get your embossing buddy, so it's basically just a little little sort of pillow with, I think it's cornstarch in it, and if you just dab that over the spots where the adhesive is, and then you'll find it's no longer sticky. So this is also really good if you're making shaker cards and you're using the foam strips. Once you've put the strips in place, if you run your embossing buddy on the sides of the foam strips, that way when you sort of put it all together and put your sort of shaker elements in the middle, they won't stick to the sides of the tape, because that can happen because it's raised up to fit everything in, and the sides of the strips are sticky. But if you run your embossing buddy over the side, so stick it down on the first surface, run your embossing buddy all the way around, get the adhesive off, and then all your shaker elements will actually sort of flow properly and won't stick to the inside of your card and then not move. Alrighty, so that is fine. Let's get this together. Alright, move this one out of the way, bring the base back in. So for this one, I've used the, actually did I use, yes, I used, actually I can't, did I? Yes, no, yes, I did. Couldn't remember. I used the non-gold side of the DSP on the card front, and then the gold pieces top and bottom. So they sit right at the bottom of the paper. So they run all the way across, and we want them sitting right at the top and right at the bottom. So I'm going to stick these down first to make sure they don't end up sticking, or don't end up not quite in place, particularly as the designer series paper is the same color as the card base, which makes it a little more difficult to see when you're trying to stick it down. So let's get this first one down. Oops. So there's the first one, and oops, the next one. Okay, let's wipe that bit off. There's just a little bit too much there. What's new? I always use too much. Okay, and we'll stick seeing as I've got this one out, may as well just keep going. And maybe get my card base the right way around might help. And try not to move it as I'm sticking things down. Alrighty, let's just check that that's where I want it. Yep, that's all looking good. Alright, now we need to mount this one onto here. So that will go there. I'm going to keep going with my green glue because it's out. But then this piece is going up on dimensionals. And we'll just get that in place. Alrighty. So that's going in the center there. Let's get some dimensionals out. Gonna go with, oops, that's a bit far over the edge. Don't want that. I'm going with some of the big ones for this just because, and then I will add a couple of small ones in the center there, or center edge. So that's going to go there. Get all the backings off. I think that's all of them. Yep, all good. Let's get that down. Alrighty, then now this is going here, so I'm going to add, so it comes up a little bit up from the bottom of the label, or the die cut label. So I'm going to add some dimensionals just a little bit along here. So I actually want some of these ones because I just want them along the bottom, and I want to make sure that they're fairly close to the edge, because a fair chunk of this is going to end up on that surface, and I don't want the dimensionals on there because that's already raised. So I'll add just some green glue for that section, and then the dimensionals for here. So I'll just check that that's gonna, yeah, that works nicely. So I'll take the backings off. And add a bit of green glue along here, so that can sit on the top. The dimensionals will keep it popped up at the bottom. Let's shuffle that along ever so slightly, just so that it's not all the way over at one edge. And that looks pretty good, I think. Dimensionals are where they should be. Alrighty, now all that is left is, where's my insert piece gone? There it is. There it is. So let's add this to the inside. Oops. Oh dear. That's not supposed to happen. I might just add a little bit of green glue along there just in case. Pressing down a bit too hard, I think, there. And that's down, and then all that is left is embellishment. So I'm using the antique pearls for this one. So let's just add a few, I'm going to the middle sized ones for this one. Alrighty, and card number 3 is done. And let me just bring all the others back in. Alrighty, so these are the 3 cards from this week's class. So remember, you have until the end of Saturday night to get your orders in to get the kit for these cards, and also don't forget the starter kit offer ends on Friday night, so 31st of October for the starter kit. So yeah, alrighty, now next week, let me change my camera back, there we go. Next week's class is it'll be November, so the Peaceful Garden Suite. So that will be next week's online class to go. I hope you enjoyed the projects. Thank you for joining me. If you are watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. If you are not already on my newsletter list, please head over to handmadeafterdark.com.au and sign up to my newsletters and stay up to date with all the latest events, offerings, promotions, and everything else that comes with being on my email list. And thank you for watching. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye.